Grace, peace, and welcome to Podcast of the Wills, a podcast that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. I am your host, Nick Milkey, and we are here to hang out on a Sunday night. I hope everybody has had a good weekend. I hope you have achieved the things that you wanted to, even if it was just laying on your couch and watching football all day, which is a lot of what I did yesterday and wished I was doing today. Didn't get there today, but I got the college stuff in, so that hits the priority meter for me this weekend. It's great to be here on a Sunday night. I have an exciting guest that I can't wait to get in here in just a few minutes. It's somebody that I have gotten to be friends with over the last year of podcasting and quarantining and Friday night virtual pubs where we just drink and laugh a lot. But we'll get to that in just a minute. First of all, as always, I've got a couple of housekeeping items right up here at the top of the show. And as usual, I'm not fully prepared, so we're going to get the screen share going on so that I can have some visual aids and get my face out of the way. T-shirts. We talk about T-shirts all the time. I don't think they're on sale this weekend, but if they are, go grab one. If not, wait for a sale. I'll let you know when they're on sale. But we have the Dad Batch T-shirt. We have Podcast of the Wills logo. We have the hashtag Spark of Positivity shirt. And then, of course, we also have the Heroes of the Mom CU, which if you're new to Podcast of the Wills, Heroes of the Mom CU is the podcast I'm doing with my wife and 4 daughters, where we are forcing her to watch the Marvel movies in chronological order. She has no idea about any of these things. She's very much the fish out of water, but it's been a lot of fun, and school's in, work is crazy, so we're not getting those done as regularly as we need to because it takes like 3 hours to watch a movie and then talk about it. But next up, sometime very soon, will be Ant-Man, and I'm excited for her to check that out because, you know, Paul Rudd is a honey, and, you know, it's just a fun movie, and it's something that we all get to enjoy together. So keep your eyes peeled for that. In the meantime, if you want to go back and catch old episodes, they're there. They're usually like 30 minutes or so. So it's kind of a quick, easy thing you can dive into. And we'd appreciate you checking it out and hearing what we think about Mom CU. Next, I'm going to play a short video about the Potathon. Y'all have heard me talk about this for the last couple of weeks, and I'm excited that I get to be a part of Potathon. So let me play this, check it out, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. So let's see if this works the way I think it does.
I'm excited to be here with you today to tell you all about Potathon 2021. Last year's efforts raised over $2,000 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and this year, with your help, we hope to raise even more. Make-A-Wish grants life-changing wishes for children with critical illnesses. Your donation to Potathon will go directly to Make-A-Wish and towards helping a child. This year's Potathon features more than a dozen Star Wars content creators and will happen on Saturday, November 6th. Starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time and running into the night with special guests ranging from Star Wars creators to authors, personalities, and more. Today, I am excited to share the first details of the day hosted by Around the Galaxy and the Bombad cast. Let's begin with a look at the schedule of events we have planned as of right now. The day will begin at 9 a.m. Eastern Time with the return of Beyond the Blast Doors Live featuring David Amilati. We'll kick things off with a conversation about the latest news and events happening in the Star Wars universe. At 10 a.m., Nick Milkey will present his weekly show, Podcast of the Wills, with a very special guest with connections to Disney Plus's The Mandalorian. Next up, at 11 a.m., we will be excited to have the leading LGBTQ+ podcast, Pink Milk, featuring Brian Barry talking about Star Wars. At noon, we welcome Tatooine Sons. David Jesse and his 2 sons, Samuel the Hutt and BB Nate, present a pop culture podcast expanding our horizons on the Star Wars, Marvel, DC, and more. Geeky Wolf will join us at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, bringing eclectic celebration, analysis, and opinions about the galaxy far, far away. At 2 p.m., one of the hosts' podcasts takes the stage. Scotty J. Rowe and Jerry Cable bring the Bombad cast Potathon with their very special guest to be announced. 3 p.m. East will feature the Star Wars literary podcast, Tarkin's Top Shelf. They have secured a very popular Star Wars author as their guest, and you will not want to miss her. Next up is one of the top YouTube channels in the Star Wars galaxy. Alex and Molly Damon will bring Star Wars Explained live to Podathon at 4 p.m. At 5 p.m., Claire Stribling, Charlie Ashby, and Nikki Kumar of the Imperial Senate podcast will host their unique brand of Star Wars talk. As we get later in the day at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Broaxium and the PotW crew come to you with their fast-paced, humorous look at Star Wars, comics, and current content. At 7 p.m., we go live from Down Under. It's Blue Bantha Milk Co. They will present a brand new AI script read live exclusively as part of Podathon. The anchor event comes from my dad at 8 p.m. Eastern Time when Around the Galaxy brings you an episode with the A-list guests that you will not want to miss. At 9 p.m., the Holo Chronicle Boys return to Podathon with another episode of hilarious and always surprising game show, Bounty Hunting, where guests look for the best deals, best items, and most bizarre Star Wars collectibles across the internet. The day will wrap up with a live after party hosted by Force Connect, featuring Jackson and Rayven and many other guests from the day. Throughout the day, there will be raffles for those that donate to Make-A-Wish via the Podathon website. Prizes will be donated by our host podcasts, guests, and supporters. We are very excited about this year's event and look forward to seeing you on November 6, 2021, starting at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Please visit www.atgcast.com/Podathon for more information and click subscribe on this channel to be reminded when Podathon 2021 benefiting Make-A-Wish gets underway. May the Force be with you.
I mean, how exciting is that? An amazing video. I have to throw a shout out to Lily, the host of that video. Lily is Pete's daughter, and she did an amazing job. She crushed it with all of that. Now I can't get the video to stop playing. Here we go. Technical difficulties. What happens? So yeah, there are so many exciting things that are going to be happening for Podathon 2021 on November 6th. All of these shows coming together. I know everybody's working extra hard to have amazing guests, to have something a little bit outside the norm of what we all do on our regular week-to-week shows. So I hope that you will make plans for November 6th to be a part of that, to hang out during the day, to donate to Make-A-Wish, and just be a part of all the fun that is going to take place. Speaking of Podathon, and speaking of really cool people, that transitions me right to our guest, because our guest tonight is not only a member of the PotW crew and the Broaxium bros and broettes, she is also one of the hosts of Force Connect. She is also one of the hosts of Sistas With Sabers. And I am proud to say that, especially over the course of this last year, as we've said, with quarantine, with podcasting, with all that stuff, she is also one of my friends. So I'm excited tonight to welcome in my friend Rayven as our guest tonight. Rayven, what is up?
Hello, everyone. Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and I'm better now that you're here, and we get to hang out, and we get to, as we said before we came on air, you don't have to be the traffic cop tonight. You don't have to sit there keeping Jackson in line, telling Jerry to stop talking, telling people to be nice. You get to hang out, and we get to have a conversation and do a little bit of canon study, which is what I've really enjoyed doing over these last several weeks, kind of coming back to the original version of this podcast, which was taking Star Wars and doing what we all do anyhow, which is picking it apart, looking for the threads that speak to us in our lives, and, just do what great storytelling does, which is it speaks to us and it tells us things. And so we're going to do that tonight. But before we do that, I want to introduce the Podcast of the Wills audience, because we do have listeners, especially, who may not know who you are. So give us kind of a little bit of an overview of who Rayven is and the stuff. You're involved in so many shows. You're kind of like the it girl. Everybody wants Rayven to be, a part of their show. So you have all these hats you wear. Tell us about Rayven.
Well, thank you very much. It makes me sound very, very much cooler than I am, but I do seem to be on a lot of shows. But I think it's just because I really enjoy talking Star Wars, and I like to talk Star Wars to all different kinds of people and in different ways. With Sistas, we talk a little bit more about, some of the more serious aspects. We talk about diversity and inclusion and those kinds of things. And, on Shooting the PotW, we talk about all sorts of things. And on Force Connect, our goal is to make sure that Star Wars fans have a happy hour they can get to, even if they can't get out of the house. So I think it works out well, and I have a lot of fun doing those things. My Star Wars journey started at the very, very beginning of my life. I don't recall when I saw the first one the first time. I don't recall not ever knowing Star Wars and having seen it. My parents were both big fans, and it's always been something that really spoke to me in so many different ways. And I'm a Luke girl from birth to the end, and I will always be a Luke girl. But that does not mean that I'm incapable of seeing other characters as incredibly important and all that other stuff. So I have my favorites, but I love everybody.
Absolutely. Well, and that, that being a Luke girl is actually going to play into one specific moment in this clip that we watched and talked about tonight, but also this is a very Luke centric, it's kind of Luke and Lando. We get kind of two halves of, I think, where the discussion will go and what we see in our canon text tonight. But before we get to that, it really is, you're like me. We're of a similar age that, like, we've always had Star Wars. We grew up with it. There was never a point where we didn't have it. It's always been a part of our lives in varying degrees. And what we talk about so much now, all of us that are content creators, of course, we talk about kind of the fool's bounty of Star Wars that we have right now and the just overwhelming amount of awesome stuff. And if some of it's not for you, that's awesome. I don't read the High Republic books. I'm not against them. I just haven't found the time and the ability to sit down and consume that. But there's other things that I do love. And, that happens along the way, a lot of different ways. You talked about always having Star Wars. Who introduced you to Star Wars? Do you remember kind of your first experience or who brought that into your life?
The first real experience that I can really, truly remember, like more than just a flashing moment in my life, is I remember going to see Return of the Jedi with my dad in the theater, because I was born in 1977. So clearly I might have missed that first show.
That's right. We didn't quite get the first one.
We didn't quite get the first showing. But I remember seeing that, and it was it had already been ingrained for me. Like, I didn't go in not remembering what happened the last time. And when we had HBO, I had seen the movies, So yeah, that's my really first memory. So I always think of it as part of the reason why I've stayed a Luke girl, because my first real solid memory is of Luke, for me, being the culmination of what Luke is, for me personally. So it was, I think it was a good first experience, but maybe because it was my first experience, it's really something that I glommed onto. But like I said, both my parents are big fans, and my mom is very much a Princess Leia type of person, a tiny little woman with, way more guts than 90% of the people she encounters. And you don't ignore her because she's diminutive.
That's right. Well, and I love that. And I've heard you tell other stories about your mom on Force Connect, or even sometimes when we're hanging out in the after party and we just, everybody really lets their hair down and talking about our lives and our stories and what informs who we are, which I think is so powerful. And you have an amazing story. We've talked, about, the differences in living in Minnesota and the differences in living in Alabama, or moving from Illinois to Alabama, and, all the different, there's so much in there. And I've heard you talk about your parents and, your upbringing and the impact that it's had on you. And so I can only imagine that also translating into Star Wars characters and those stories that you got as a kid, you drew correlations right away, it seems like.
Absolutely. I mean, my dad, my stepdad that I grew up with, kind of looks like Luke Skywalker. I mean, he's blonde haired, blue eyed, and he's that kind of person, that always gave off that really clear delineation between right and wrong. And the good guys always win, and black hats are bad. I mean, that's just the kind of person that he was, in the best possible way.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and so let's talk about this for a minute, because you did talk about being a Luke girl, and that's no secret if anybody has spent any time with Rayven. Again, in the best way. So for you, and especially, and this is what hit me while you were talking about really your first experience with Luke, was Return of the Jedi Luke. He's confident. He's got the swagger. He's wearing the all black. The boots are on point. Everything is working. So to have that and to have such a deep rooted connection to that, especially that version of Luke, I would imagine, was season 2 wrap up of Mandalorian everything you thought it could be? Was it good? Was it hard? Because that's a fine line to walk for somebody who loves Luke in that way. What were your thoughts about it? Good, bad, or, indifferent?
I loved it, honestly. I loved it for a number of reasons. First of all, I felt that some really small intricacies of Luke were really touched upon. I felt like the fighting style really fit the over theatrical, very almost ballet-esque moves that you see when you watch Mark Hamill back in, those lightsaber duels, just completely
when they're
different from what we see
rehearsing
now.
in bell-bottom jeans and cowboy boots and tank tops.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's everything is his feet are not just spaced apart for proper balance. They're spaced so far apart that if he's not careful, he's going to Jean-Claude Van Damme himself,
That's right. It
but
becomes a whole other movie.
Yeah, and there's just the very big swinging sword movements, and there's just so much about that I really felt that they incorporated into the way that he moved as a character. And I also think that what he did as a character at that moment fit with kind of the story in my mind of where Luke went after the fact. And I understood that there were people that had issues with it, specifically, he's taking Grogu away and he's, a part of this whole ugly system of the Jedi and so on and so forth. But I've never looked at it that way. I see where people see it that way, but
sure, I
look at it as Luke was still at that point in that I am Luke Skywalker, therefore I must. And, the Luke we meet in the sequel trilogy has passed that point. He's lost that I am Luke Skywalker, therefore I must. And I thought it was really beautifully done because it does put him in that place, but it also doesn't, specifically say anything. You know what I mean? He comes and takes Grogu, but he doesn't necessarily do anything else at that point. It's just kind of like, I'm going to take him where he can be safe and I can teach him stuff. And that's it. There's just not a whole lot more to it at that point. So I feel like it was beautifully done. It's a great homage. Mark Hamill is not the same age he was in 1983. Sure. There's a limit to what they can do. I do not mind the idea of going back and telling more of Luke's story with another actor. I didn't mind the CG in this case because, again, very short. And for me, that scene, honestly, was completely destroyed in the best possible way by Pedro Pascal, who took this Luke girl, who lives and breathes and jumped up and down and squealed like a little girl when she found out the sequel trilogies were happening and Mark Hamill was going to be in it. He made me forget Luke Skywalker was even standing there. And it was because his relationship with Grogu and the acting that they did. I forgot Luke Skywalker was standing there. And for me, that's like, I just stopped breathing. Like, I don't forget when Luke Skywalker is in the room. And I was just like, I don't even care right now. I'm just in on this.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
So I loved it personally. But I have a very, a different, really, I feel like I have a very different view of Luke than a lot of other people do.
Sure. So. Well, and I think that there are several things in there because for me, and I said this a bunch of times, and of course, when we were still doing recaps of Mando episodes way back when Mando was still on, we knew somebody was coming. We knew that Grogu sat on the stone in the episode where he's taken, and somebody's going to show up. And so, of course, we spent 1 or 2 or 3, however many weeks it was between episodes of when that happened, all playing, let's come up with our favorite theory about who's going to show up. And Luke was never one of the ones that I had as a possibility.
Me either.
My biggest theory was that I thought Ahsoka would come back because I thought what would happen was, even though in the episode that she's in, she says, I can't let what I saw happen, that whole thing. I thought she would be affected by what she knew what happened to Anakin, and it would cause her to come back and say, I don't want that to happen to somebody, some version of, survivor's guilt or wanting to do better, that was my kind of prevailing theory that I felt like I made sense in my head. Of course, lots of people threw out Ezra. They're saving that for something else. We know that, I don't know that I would have been mad at Cal from Jedi Fallen Order. It would have been a
Mhm.
lot more putting pieces in place. But then again, it might not have been, because honestly, they had Ahsoka show up in an episode, and a bajillion people watch Mandalorian who only watch Mandalorian in the main movies, have no idea who that is. And they were like,
Mhm.
oh, my dad, perfect example. I've said this 100 times. My dad
Yep.
called me and was like, yeah, I really like that Jedi with the 2 lightsabers. And I'm like, you have
Mhm.
no idea. Like, I can't begin to tell you how awesome she is.
Exactly.
So what it came down to was, when it was Luke, and of course they say, single X-Wing fighter, we all know what's happening at that point.
Mhm.
It wasn't who I expected or wanted, but I was so glad that it's who it was. And it made
I
so
agree.
much sense,
Yeah.
and it really is. It's the time when Luke was out in the galaxy searching and finding and honing his Force abilities on his way to starting a temple that we, of course, would learn would crash and would, everything else. I wanted to hit on one other thing you mentioned too, because it's so powerful. And I want to shout out our friend Brian from Pink Milk. And Brian's the one, exactly what you're talking about. We talk so much in Star Wars about found family, and it makes my heart warm every time we talk about it, because I feel that in my real life with my friends and my friends who are my family. But listening to Brian talk about, as a parent of foster kids and adoptive children, it hits in a way that I don't relate to, because I didn't grow up that way and it's not my story. But to hear him talk about the pain of watching Luke take Grogu away from Din, and it wasn't a forcible taking, but it was still born out of trauma, born out of whatever Grogu experienced in the Jedi Temple during Order 66, born out of having a connection with Din. Like, there's a lot of power in that story. And this is what we love about Star Wars and anything we're fans of. We
Right.
get to see ourselves in those stories in way, like, you get to see Star Wars in a lot of ways that I don't get to see, whether it's race, whether it's gender, whether it's, whatever it might be. And Brian gets to see it in a whole other way as a parent of adopted kids. And so I'm eternally grateful for his story, for getting to hear him talk about that version of it. And I knew that's what you were referring to, talking about that, because it gives it another angle. And
it totally does. It totally does.
Yeah, I love that. And that's what I love about that storytelling. So that was a long way of me saying your favorite beginning Jedi was Luke in Return of the Jedi. To, just wanting to know how somebody who has that deep connection felt about, Luke showing up in Mando. And I think it was great. And I agree with you. I would love to see some, furthering stories or some more flashbacks that tell, like everybody else. All I really want is 5 minutes of Luke and Ahsoka talking, and Luke telling Ahsoka he came back. Like, I could be done at that point. Like, the power and that ability for that moment to happen could be phenomenal. And I think they could tell it in some really neat ways. But we don't know what we're going to get. All we know is we've got lots more Star Wars coming our way.
A lot more than we ever expected to get. Let's be real about that.
I was going to say, considering the age we are and how we grew up with Star Wars, I didn't think I was going to get anything other than Timothy Zahn books, which I'm grateful for. But like, holy cow, look at it. I mean, the thing that came out last week, and I think Pete covered it on Disturbances in the Force. There's like 11 television projects that are slated at this point over the next, however many years. Like, there's so much, it's a bountiful joy of goodness and nerd deliciousness that we all get to enjoy and be excited about. So that's phenomenal. Absolutely. And I love that. And I love your story, and I love hearing those connections. And again, tying it to things like your mom, and your mom being a badass and being, that Leia type. It just, we see those things and we have those connections with it, which makes the story more personal, because we have those direct connections to it. So thank you for sharing that. That's so much fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to pivot into our canon study. We're going to pivot into our sacred text of the evening, which is, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but it doesn't matter. Our clip started with Han and the
At
Falcon
1 hour
with
and
Leia.
16 minutes.
That's right, 1:16. That's right. Of course, you showed up organized because you're that kind of cool.
I watched it.
You did watch it. I bet
did.
you took notes and everything.
Oh yeah, I didn't recite it along with it or anything.
Exactly. It's not like I haven't seen it a time or three. So we start out in this clip. We've got Han, Chewie, Leia, and 3PO in the Falcon, and they're floating away with the garbage, which I love that scene. I love, kind of the couple of seconds right before that is when Leia kisses Han on the cheek, and she says, "You have your moments." That whole bit, that relationship. We talked last week, about that relationship and just the way they go back and forth. And they're going to sneak off to somewhere. They're trying to escape. They end up at Bespin. We get the great line, "Lando's not a system, he's a man." And so our heroes end up on Bespin, or they head to Bespin, and we've got Luke still training. And I swear on my life, because I know how much you love Luke, when Luke, he's doing the headstand and he has the vision and everything collapses, and he gets up and he says, "Well, I've got to go and help him." And he immediately turns around and he walks back to the rock to get his other shirt to put on. And there's this shot of Mark Hamill and his back, and he's just ripped. And it's like prime Mark Hamill, prime Empire Strikes Back, working out. And I just went, I bet Rayven loves this scene as well. You should.
It's all right. It's not the Chanel boots, but it's pretty good.
Nothing will ever be the Chanel boots, but we all know that.
Nothing will ever be the Chanel boots.
So we file very happy 1B, 1C, 1D right behind it. So Luke is training. He's on Dagobah with Yoda. He has the vision, collapses, panics, has to go help his friends. And then from there, the biggest part of this, and what really feeds into our theme, which is betrayal, is Lando has made the deal with the Empire. He's going to turn Han and Leia and Chewie over to the bounty hunters. Boba Fett, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Boba Fett, but December 29th, he might be showing up. Yeah, in case anybody's missed it lately, the Bobazance is real.
It is real.
It is very much real. So we get this clip, and the clip ends. We get the betrayal. We have the great dining room scene, which, even as a kid, I was like, this is so weird. Like, we've never seen Darth Vader eat food, but he's sitting here with like an entire banquet prepared. And there's so much. And I think it's Connor Ratliff from the George Lucas Talk Show loves to talk about when they walk into that dining room and the awkward way that Boba Fett just steps out of the side in the background. Like, it's so weird, and like, okay, you stay over there, and when they come in, like, you're gonna do, like, it's almost like they rehearsed it before it was,
no, it's
Boba
and Darth. Back to medieval throne times when you had those little outcuts in the wall,
That's right, that kind of thing. So we wrap up the segment of our text tonight with Han being frozen or going into the pit, and of course we get the classic "I love you, I know" moment, and I think it cuts off sometime right those seconds right after that. So in this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw kind of my guiding questions at you and see what things stood out for you to start our discussion. The other caveat that I like to throw in is, just like any other canon study, whether it's the Bible, whether it's, some other text that you're studying, this is our focal point, but that doesn't mean that we don't get to reference other things in other parts of the canon. So if there are other things that tie in, by all means, we're not spoiler issues here.
Right.
So Rayven, for you, the first question that I've been using the last several weeks is, what is this text telling us? What are you being told from this text that we viewed for this episode tonight, knowing that our theme is betrayal?
Well, for me, actually, it's a really interesting study because I see betrayal differently now than I did when I was a kid. When I watched the movie when I was a kid, I thought, gosh, that Lando, he's just a horrible person. How dare he? And then when he turns around and changes his mind, it's like, well, he thought better of his mistake. And so he did what he did. And as an adult now, I see it as a situation where he was looking at the numbers. I need to protect my people, my city. And, Han may be my friend, but, yeah,
Well, and he has the
the needs
line
of
where
the
he
many
says,
outweigh the needs
yeah.
of the few. I'm
Well,
sorry
and
to
he
tell
has
you.
the line. He says, I've just made a deal that'll keep the Empire out of here forever. Like, and he's
Exactly.
an administrator, and Han gives him crap about going legit. So
Right.
it's all very much tied in, and those are again the things that we wouldn't have thought about as children.
No, it never occurred to me that Lando was thinking about anybody beyond himself when I was a kid. And now as an adult, I can absolutely see where in a situation like that, I'm not sure how high up the food chain I would go to save a bunch of people if I had to sacrifice someone.
Sure.
It's like, sorry, but you got to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I just think I think it's a human behavior. And I think as we get older, we learn those kinds of things because we experience life. We experience the reality that loss is inevitable.
Right.
On every single level, you're going to lose something at some point, and you come to accept a certain amount of loss. It's kind of like the idea of collateral damage in a battle. You're never going to have a war where no one innocent is going to get hurt. You just have to start to look at the numbers and go, okay, how much are we willing to live with before it becomes too much? And for me, I look at it as Lando going, listen, dude, you're my friend and stuff, but like all of these people outweigh you. And also I think too, and I don't think that this is talked about enough, Lando, I think, has a great deal of faith in Han and his ability to handle himself.
To get out of it.
It's almost
Absolutely.
like, I'm willing to throw you under the bus because I know you can wrap your whip around the axle and drag behind the bus until you can handle your business. And that's something that never occurred to me as a kid. But that's Han Solo, right? I mean,
that's right.
If you're going to be trapped somewhere with no way out, who do you want with you? The guy who's going to keep coming up with stuff. And I mean, that's Han Solo. It might not work, but he's got a next plan.
Well, and it ties also, and this kind of gets us to a second layer of betrayal in this text that we get. The original deal, as it's presented to us on screen, is that Leia and Chewie were going to get to stay there with Lando.
Right.
And then Vader changes the deal, put him on my ship, the whole deal. And so I think that actually bolsters your theory, which is if Lando knows he's got Chewie and Leia, he can take care of them. They're in his pocket. Han's good at figuring stuff out. Han's the MacGyver, Han's the Indy, Han's all the things that we know Han Solo to be. So it's a gamble. He's wagering on, do I do this or do I do this? Because I know, he can handle himself. It goes to a really cheesy example because I watched this with my girls the week before last. In the George Clooney I think Batman and Robin is the George Clooney one. And there's the part with Two-Face, and Two-Face does the thing where the two people get pushed off the side, Robin and, whoever else. And Batman goes after the girl because he knew Robin could take care of himself. And it was we've seen that trope a lot of different ways. But your point is really fantastic, which is we don't ever talk about that from a Star Wars perspective. We don't ever talk about that from a Lando perspective. And Lando was no dummy. He wasn't just good hair, smooth dude,
although he
whatever.
Is both of those things.
He is all of those things. And if you don't think that at some point there's going to be a vintage Colt 45 ad hanging on the wall somewhere behind me, I just haven't gotten the right one yet.
Bring it.
But I think that's such a fantastic point, which is he's weighing this all out. And it goes back to your point also about being an adult and how we see things and how we approach life and decisions we have to make. If my kids are struggling with two things, am I going to help the 13-year-old or the 5-year-old? More likely the 5-year-old, because the 13-year-old is more equipped to deal in their moment, depending on what it is. So I cut you off, and you were into your thoughts about what the text is telling us, and that's such a good point. But what else did you see in there?
Well, I saw that, and then I also saw in this situation, which I thought was really kind of interesting, was that idea that Vader does continue to change the deal. He says, "Well, now I'm going to do this," and first of all,
pray I don't alter it further.
Exactly. And as a kid, I'll be honest with you, as a kid, I saw it exactly the same way I see it now. He was always planning to take her. He was always planning to take Chewie. He was never
He's the
planning
bad guy.
to
That's what they do.
But I think the part of it that bothers me is because, again, Lando is an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And Lando is not an innocent adult. He's as streetwise as they come.
Right.
Drop him anywhere, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
The idea that he would not understand the old adage of give them an inch and they'll take a mile is utterly ridiculous. But I think in this particular case, he was just so tied into protecting the people that he was like, listen, if it's got to be all three of them, then I guess it does. I don't even know these other two people. I mean, I do think that was his goal when he agreed to it, but whether or not that's, actually what was going to happen, I don't think he ever really considered that. And I think that that's something that was just kind of a failing for me personally in the story part, that he would be so surprised by this. I mean, again, even though at that point we hadn't seen the Lando that we see in Solo.
Sure.
We're all pretty much aware that this is who he is. I mean, this is not a stupid man. He's been around the block enough times to know every single crack. So why is he completely oblivious to the fact that somebody with all of the power in a negotiating situation, who doesn't really need to be negotiating at all, would not change the deal or alter it to suit their own purposes and continue to just up the ante as they go? I mean, it just seems kind of naive on the part of the character who should be the least naive. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when Padme is naive, you expected a little bit of her,
right?
Because she is like Luke. She's idealistic, and it's always, the good guys wear the white hats and so on. And it just seems really odd to me to have somebody as worldly wise as Lando be that. Duh.
Yeah. And I wonder.
Would expect.
Yeah, and I wonder almost, and I like what you said, because I've not always thought about it in this way either. It wasn't like this big altruistic thing that he was going to take care of Leia and Chewie. And the fact that he was so incensed when Vader changed the deal, because like you said, he didn't know them. Like, they were just, he knew who they were looking for, who they seemed to be looking for. I mean, they're looking for Skywalker. Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie, for the most part, are also collateral damage. We'll test it on Captain Solo, but the whole point we're here is for Luke. Like, that was still a part of the deal. Let me do this. You can keep the people. We'll test it on one of them, whatever it was. But I almost wonder, was there an emotional side of Lando? Because Han was his friend at some level, between what we see in Solo, the other adventures that we haven't gotten yet, all of that stuff. There is a connection there. There is a part of him that I wonder if, is Han that soft spot for Lando that blinded him to? Because you're right, Lando's a scoundrel. He does this kind of stuff to other people all the time. And for him to get snowed by it is surprising to everybody. I like what Framey puts up here, and this adds to our conversation. Perhaps Lando felt that making a deal with Vader could provide a small chance of the deal coming off, better than going up against the Empire and accepting absolutely no chance.
Oh, I agree that that's 100% the case. He accepted the deal because he didn't have an option. I just find it odd that he didn't see the adjustment to the deal coming later if it suited Vader. Because you and I both know that if he had had Han in the interrogation room like he did, right? And Leia and Chewie were off in their own quarters, and Luke had shown up and he'd gotten him into the, into the freezing chamber and he wouldn't have he probably would have still taken Leia, but he, probably would have left Chewie, because Chewie wasn't important to Vader at all. Chewie's not what he's here for. He's here for Luke. He's not even really here for Han or Leia, but I mean, I wouldn't leave Leia. I mean, oh my God, political prisoner. Yes, Chris, absolutely. Lando is innocent.
Well, and I was going to say, in the language of the kids today, Lando has entered the chat.
Yeah, exactly.
Chris Ryans has shown up to point out that Lando is innocent. And you're absolutely right, Chris. We would never besmirch the reputation of Landonus Balthasar Calrissian, or as I like to call him, William December Williams, because, how do we not have the most amazing names for two different real people and characters all together? Lando is fantastic. Chris Ryan's as Lando is even more fantastic. I'm just going to throw that out
Agreed.
there. A little bit of
100%
schmoozing, a little
agree.
bit of sucking up on my part. But yeah, so there is a lot to Lando. There's a lot to the inner turmoil that maybe he's going through. And again, like you said, why is he blinded to, why is this the thing that he gets suckered on? Because he's usually suckering somebody else.
Willful ignorance. It's willful
Okay.
ignorance. It's the same thing that tells you that, if you're on an airplane and something goes wrong and you're going to crash in some place you shouldn't, we all know what the worst case scenario of that is.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to think about that. No one considers that. It's the same as every other thing we do in the world that's dangerous, that could result in some sort of harm or hurt to anyone. No one wants to think about the worst case scenario. For me, it's more the idea that he does give off this impression of being so angry when it's changed. And it's just kind of like, boo, you should have seen that coming. Because, like, Holland Tunnel, and there it is. Like, I just found that part kind of unrealistic, again, for a worldly wise character. But I think, too, there might be some playing up on it just because, this is George Lucas dialogue. So, there is something that has to be, kind of calculated.
It can be a little ham-fisted at times.
It can be a smidgy ham-fisted.
That's right.
And that's okay.
But let's do this.
I love George, but, he shouldn't.
Oh, no doubt.
Right.
Faster, more intense. We all get it.
Faster, more intense. Get it.
But let me do this for a minute. Let me play devil's avocado and say that
I'm going to make guacamole out of you.
Exactly. What if that's a put on by Lando? Lando's the smuggler. What if he's protesting almost too much and having that hurt because he doesn't want Vader to go any farther? And
I agree that that's entirely possible.
Sure. And that's just, as these thoughts are developing in my head, again, we've said it from the top. Lando's no dummy. Lando's been around the world. Lando's done these things. There's Brian popping in. Hey, Brian.
Love you.
And so it could be anything. There's so much, and there's so many layers of betrayal. So here's what I'm going to bring in as far as our topic goes tonight. If it's genuine, if he's hurt by it, if he didn't see it coming, then there's an internal betrayal that Lando has betrayed himself by not seeing it coming, by not, being prepared for what he should have seen. As you so well put it, he betrayed himself in a sense because you should know better. We've all had moments where we should know better.
Was he not prepared though?
That's the question. That's where
because as soon as the fit hits the shan, as they say, he's typing away. Right. Was he really unprepared, or was it just the worst case scenario that he had on his if this happens
That's
board?
Right. His flow chart that he had.
Like Hannibal Smith, Hannibal Smith had in case everything goes to crap, this is what we're going to do.
We're still going to get to say we love it when a plan comes together at the end.
Exactly. In the end of it, it's still going to be
But we're going to follow the flow chart. We're going to go, okay, if Vader says this, we do this. If this thing happens, it's yeah, I'm with you. I am of the mind as a general rule that Lando was for the most part in control. Things were changing and flipping and varying along the way. But at the core of it, there's still a betrayal. There's still Lando betraying Han, but maybe he wasn't betraying Han because ultimately Luke is the goal. And these, again, collateral damage, these are the ones along the way. Apparently we have homework now too. Chris said we need to read Charles Soule's current Star Wars comic run. It's being dealt with right now. It's really good. I will do that as a not comic book reader, but if Chris says it, I'm in. So that's all I need.
I always do everything Chris tells me except watch Smallville.
But okay, we'll have to come back to that conversation another night. We're gonna get a Force Connect after show where Chris and Rayven and I talk about things like Smallville and The West Wing. Exactly. All right, so we've talked about betrayal. The first question was, what is the text telling us? The second question is, what is the text asking of us? And so we try to pivot a little bit into what are you personally as Rayven being asked of, what is being asked of you as you watch these scenes?
I think what's being asked of the viewer, but this particular viewer, since I know her pretty well,
Absolutely.
is to believe that in his heart, Lando has the best,
Yes.
goals in mind, and that he is being forced in this particular situation. He has no choice. And that when the deal changes and things become more serious, he finally decides that this is the last straw and I'm going to fight till the end. And this is my, growing up with Disney,
Sure.
mindset coming through, because that's how it came across to me. Now, when I watched it the other day, because I knew that we were going to be talking about this, it was slightly different for me this time. But again, I'm a different person now. The first time I saw this, I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I'm 44 years old now. I have a very different worldview and a lot of different experiences. And I see it now less that they're telling me that Lando is a good guy and he has the best interests at heart and blah, 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 blah. And again, I'm seeing it more that Lando has grown to the point where he realizes he's a custodian, and that is more important than what best suits him. But in the end, as Vader continues to change the deal, he realizes that, custodian or not, he no longer has control. So he announces to everybody in the city to get the heck out, because he knows he's lost complete control of it. And at that point, he does, openly turn against Vader and start to go against the deal that he originally made by, typing away on his keypad and going about his business. But I do think that that's what the text is trying to tell us. Not so much that he's a good guy deep down and he just didn't have a choice. I think they're trying to teach us the reality that there comes a point where the loss is too great.
That's right.
And there comes a point where you just have to accept the fact that sacrificing as much, if not all, of what you have is what it's going to take, that's the choice you have to make. And the reality is they don't really show it on the screen this way. But the reality is that is what Lando is doing. He's risking absolutely everything. We all know the Empire can bring an incredible amount of power to bear. He understands that this chance that he's taking to try to save his friend is in fact putting a target on his back. Not that he didn't already have one, but it's different when Vader's after you than when the Black Sun is after you. It's like, you can't hide from the Empire. Not in this time, that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
In the canon. You know what I mean? It's not, some other time where you might be able to get away with it.
Right.
I'm talking to you.
There's not as much disarray. Well, and I want to highlight what Chris said, and then I'm going to come to Brian's comment as well. And we've kind of hit on this a little bit. Lando had no choice and had to choose between the Cloud City denizens or the one dude, as he says, who cheated him out of his ship. The needs of the many. If I'm looking at, if we're talking about what is the text asking of us, if I apply that to some real world application for me, which is a little bit of a stretch from what we're watching with Space Wizards and all of the fun that we love. But let's say my wife and I will have been married 16 years in December, which is actually real. I've got 16 years of history with this person and 4 kids and all the things that we have in this life that we've established. And if somebody, if you show up in my driveway who is a friend, but is not somebody that I have 16 years of history and protection and overwatch and oversight and all these other things of, and you need help, I'm going to help to the degree that I can help. But there's going to come a point when I'm going to go, but I know Raven's smart. I know she's crafty. I know she can do X, Y, and Z. I've done what I can do. I still have all these other people behind me. And I do think that at the core of this, that's a lot of what Lando was doing, because we get him. He's Cloud City administrator. He's trying to go legit. He's, whatever he's doing. And I love what you said. He knows who he knows who Han is. So he's, Han's a big boy. Han can take care of himself. Han's gotten out of scrapes before.
Yep.
So he is making choices based on big collateral damage kind of decisions and who else is going to affect. And like you said, we don't spend enough time talking about how awesome Lobot is, but he types on his computer on his wrist. Lobot shows up, helps out, saves the day. But he issues the evacuation order, which gives us Ice Cream Maker Man, and which gives us all the other things that we get, because he also realized he has to look out for them. And is it better to tell them to get the hell out, or is it better for them to stay put because the Empire might be leaving a garrison, things might be about to, he's still making those decisions all the way along. The other comment I wanted,
but when he calls the evacuation, I just have to say, when he calls for the evacuation, that is in fact Lando throwing his cards on the table. This is it, because he's giving away all of his, power, all of his wealth, quote unquote. You understand? You know what I mean? He's saying, listen, I can't protect you. Get out. And he knows that by doing that, he's putting himself at the point where he's basically taking everything he has and shoving it in the middle, knowing the other side has the winning hand. And there's nothing he can do. He's going all in anyway. So I just had to say that when he does that evacuation order, he is in fact at that point surrendering all he has.
Well, and I think that connects to what Brian said. He said, I agree with Rayven. He said, Lando knew what he was doing. He was also swindling Vader. And he says, and yes, sometimes we have to choose between two bad choices. And that's where Lando was. Push those chips into the middle of the table. There's bad and there's not quite as bad. Let's see where we're going to go. Let's see what we're going to do. And we've all been there in real life too. We've all had to choose between two crappy decisions. And sometimes it's going to still sting. It's going to burn. It's going to cut somebody. It's going to hurt. But at some point, we have to make a decision, because we are in positions of leadership, whether it's in our jobs, whether it's in our relationships, whether it's in our family situation, whatever it is. It's not always winners. It's not all. And that's what we also love so much about Empire Strikes Back and the way Empire ends. It doesn't end with winners and rainbows and unicorns. It ends with missing hands and missing Hans and missing,
with everything going completely to garbage.
It's garbage mode. But we love it because that also hits us and feels so real. And that's, kind of the big part of my big takeaway, especially as we do these canon studies and as we look at this and go, if this is our sacred text, what it is telling us, it's really real. And that's what you want from a sacred text, which is to meet you where you are, to meet you in a place of recognition, to meet you in a place of going, I may not have been in that situation, but I know what that feels like. And that's a lot of what we get out of, we've all been betrayed by a friend, a relationship, a family member. Somewhere along the line, we've gotten that gut punch when that door opens and the nice dinner that we're going to turns into a crap sandwich. Like, we've been there. We know what that feels like. And that's the other thing that Brian said. He said, the maker knows what he's doing. The dialogue may have been bad, but George can tell these stories.
Well, and that's what makes Star Wars transcend the bad dialogue, is the fact that the story is still, and all the dialogue wasn't bad. The stuff that Carrie and Han and Harrison fixed.
Turns out Carrie in particular knew what she was doing, and there's a reason why her name and hand are on so many movies that we love, that we have no idea that she came in and fixed their dialogue. So, not at all surprising. So, okay. So the first two questions were, what is the text telling us? What is the text asking of us? The third question, and this is kind of where we start to circle in on our wrap up, is where's the text sending us from here? As you go out into Rayven's life, Rayven is a professional. Rayven has friends. Rayven has areas of the world, the galaxy that she explores. Where does this text send us? What are the things that it equips us with?
Well, I think I'm a pessimist by nature. So for me, this text tells me beware that betrayal could be around any corner.
Sure.
And but not only that, and I know that sounds like a super downer thing. Sorry about that, but
it's okay.
It also reminds me too to remember that betrayal isn't always what it seems, because we can see it from the point of, you're betraying your friend, you're turning him over to the bad guy, you're letting him be used, blah blah blah. But as we've said, I'm also saving all of these people. and that's the price that has to be paid. And to me, that's what it's sending me home with, is that reminder. I mean, to be honest with you, all of Empire Strikes Back is basically the message of, with every joyful gain, there is pain and suffering that we may not think about. And I think as Star Wars fans, we've seen that brought home to us so clearly by seeing Rogue One and seeing the sacrifice that comes before the joyous, end title sequence of A New Hope. And I think that Empire is just, that version, that part of the story. It's the act 2 of the story. It's where everything goes completely sideways. But the reality is that the reason why those tropes exist is because that is life.
Yes.
You have never met a person for whom everything has gone right and every friend has been true and every love has been forever. That's not the reality of the world that we live in. It's not the reality of humans as a species, and I can't imagine it would be the reality for aliens anywhere else. Because anywhere you have free will, you're going to have somebody who screws with it. You're going to have power players. You're going to have people who are always willing to follow. You're going to have people who don't want to fight versus people who can't wait to fight. That is real. And I think that that's what the text is teaching us, is this harder lesson, because we will all experience loss. We'll all experience challenges, but betrayal is one of those things as humans that we take so terribly to heart. Betrayal is the kind of thing that makes us wonder if our life is worth living. It makes us question our self-esteem, our self-worth, all of those other things, because when something bad happens, that's something bad. When you do something bad, that's something bad. But when someone betrays your trust, your love, your whatever, that's an attack on you.
Correct.
Even though in reality, it's entirely showing that they do not value you as high as you value them, or whatever relationship you might have. But that doesn't matter, because as a human, what you feel is that somehow you are failing. You are coming up short. You are not doing what you need to do. So betrayal is a very different kind of experience, I think, for humans just as a species, because we expect to be able to count on those around us, particularly those ones we expect to keep close. And while Lando and Han aren't close, it's quite clear that they're kindred spirits. And if you know someone that you feel is a kindred spirit, you may not know them very well, but that doesn't change the fact that you have that deep spiritual connection on a completely different level that even might not even be able to be explained, but you have it. And I think that that's the reason that's what the text is telling us. And it's the reason why it's so powerful, because betrayal is a very different kind of crime to everything else. To just hate someone, okay, but to betray someone is very different.
It's personal. Betrayal is personal. Betrayal
and it's taken as such.
That's right. Oh, absolutely. Well, and so that also brings me to something that we mentioned kind of up top, which is there's a lot of other places in our overall canon text where we see betrayal, where we see these other, the elements of kind of what we're talking about. Are there any in particular, any other betrayal moments throughout the entire Star Wars canon that stands out to you that maybe has an impact on your thoughts and things we've talked about tonight?
Well, kind of, sort of, but I'm not sure that it would necessarily translate to everybody. But for me personally,
well, that's what we're talking about. This is your floor. You have the floor, my dear.
Whew, look out, y'all. I think for me, one of the other times in Star Wars where I felt a massive betrayal was honestly in Return of the Jedi, in the throne room. And this is going to sound completely wacky, and I totally get that. But for me, there was a huge, knife to the chest betrayal when Palpatine made it so very clear that he was perfectly fine with Luke taking Vader's place.
Right.
And the reason why is because, and I mean, even though I didn't consciously know it at the time, because obviously we didn't have the prequel, trilogy when I was a kid. But I always felt that the reason that Vader was with Palpatine was because he was lacking something and Palpatine gave it. Because that's usually what happens. When you have somebody who, let's be honest, if you have somebody who bends the knee, who kisses the ring, it's likely due to the fact that they're missing something else in their life and they're trying to get it from you. Because otherwise they wouldn't be, subjecting themselves to you. They would want to be with you, be friends with you, be associated with you, but when you bend the knee, you're physically saying, I belong to you because you have something I want so bad, I'm willing to sacrifice myself to get it. And for me, that was a moment of real betrayal, because I felt like at that point, and I know that not everybody feels this way, but in Return of the Jedi, Luke was as stable and as strong in his convictions as he would ever be.
Right.
When he's in that hallway before they go up, to the Death Star and all that other business, he is as sure in his convictions, as absolutely solid in what he believes. There is still good in you. You won't turn, you won't turn me. I know you're still okay. And to have, his father have that full devotion to the Emperor, it's too late for me, son. It's not too late for you. It's not, what I mean? Like there, but then they're up in the throne room, and it's quite clear that Palpatine is just like, I don't care which one of you it is, as long as I have a hand that's worth having, and I mean, that's typical of the Emperor's hand. It's like, it doesn't matter who it is, so long as it's, who I need at the time. But to me, that was a real betrayal that I don't think we think hard enough about how that impacted what Anakin did going forward. And yes, I did change to Anakin, because as soon as he makes that choice, he is Anakin again to me, but I think it is a big moment of betrayal that I don't think we talk about, because Palpatine's bad guy, right? And we don't care what he does. But the reality is that his betrayal of Vader's devotion and all that Vader has done to further his ends, and granted it was partially for Vader's own ends as well, but to spit all of that back in his face and say, yeah, but I'll take the younger version. God darn if it didn't feel like a man getting rid of his 40-year-old wife for a 20-year-old.
Yep. There were, it's absolutely it. He was,
and it felt that way even back then.
Oh, well, and it's pure Palpatine, which we've always talked about. And one of the, I guess, pseudo hot takes that I have is how much I was okay with Palpatine being the big bad in Rise of Skywalker over the course of the entire, because from everything we've ever known about Palpatine, it was always about Palpatine and preservation and power. He didn't care who was the next one to get him where he wanted to be. And if the new young hotness was better than the old metal robot, whatever hotness, that's where he was going. Like, it was all about Palpatine. It wasn't about Anakin. It wasn't about Luke. It was about how does he get to the next place of self-preservation and maintaining the power and the control he had.
And the only person in the throne room who didn't know that was Anakin. Correct. Because I think Luke knew it.
Luke did know.
Palpatine clearly knew it. But
well, and that's one of the beauties. Luke knew.
He was like, dude, you're disposable to him. He does not care about you.
Yeah, he doesn't care about you. And I think that's one of the great, in hindsight, maybe even not necessarily intentional storytelling points we get from the prequels. And as somebody who didn't like the prequels, struggled with the prequels when they initially had their heyday, but came back around to be what we like to call a reformed prequelist, the Anakin that we get in those prequels that is emotional, that is impetuous, that is like, that translates into the Anakin we get in Return of the Jedi, and the Anakin that's blinded by the loyalty. He's blind. He's supposed to be doing this. He knows he's supposed to be doing this. He's missing that the dude is stepping all over him. He's missing all those, the red flags, as it were, that he's not seeing, that his kid comes in and goes, are you kidding me? He doesn't care about you.
But Anakin doesn't have the self-worth that so many of us are brought up with. He's a slave. And
right.
when he's no longer a slave, he's still basically taken
And
in
his
by
mother is
somebody.
killed,
And
who
his
was a
life
slave.
is, run by somebody who
That's right.
tells him what he can and can't do. And, all of those things. I just don't think that Anakin ever developed the self-worth, because when he did become Anakin of the Clone Wars, when he was, Anakin, it was still for him, I think, trying to create his own self-worth. And that's not impossible, but I don't think it can be done in the way he was trying to do it.
Right. Well, and that's really, I love what you said that, and I'm formulating this theory literally as it's coming out of my mouth. But like Clone Wars Season 7 that we got last year opens with that battle on the bridge. And Obi-Wan is being Obi-Wan, who we love. Obi-Wan. He's safe. He's calculated. He's smart. He's making good decisions. He's hiding behind the thing. And here comes alpha male Anakin walking down the bridge. They can shoot me if they want. He has a plan. Why are you hot? He's cocky, cool, self-assured Anakin. But he's that way because he's still seeking the validation. At this point, he's seeking the validation that Obi-Wan's going to continue to say, yeah, you're good. You're great at this. You're learning, because it comes from exactly what you said. It comes from a place of brokenness and self-esteem, and not, having been a slave and being raised in poverty and having a mother who was a slave. The loss that he experiences, like all those things inform a not self-assured Anakin. We don't know what Luke got from Owen and Beru, but seemingly it was more than what Anakin got, in the little bit. I mean, obviously his mother loved him and took care of him as best she could.
Sure.
But there's a difference. The confidence that Luke had, whether it was from his 15 minutes with Obi-Wan or his 2 days with Yoda, as it seemed, but also I think for Luke, it also comes from the found family that we love to come back to. The edification that he gets from Leia, the fact that after he blows up the Death Star, he gets validation from Han. Like he gets to be one of the guys. He gets to be an important dude in the rebellion because of this succession of events that so it gives him a different confidence. And I think you're exactly right. The psyche and the confidence we don't talk about with Anakin at that stage in Return of the Jedi versus who Luke comes in. That scene in the hallway, I could picture it as you were talking about it. He's so calm and cool, and it's not cocky. It's just self-assured. It's, look, I know you're not going to do this. It's fine. We're going to be fine.
And he has every reason to believe that, because he doesn't understand, because he doesn't know. I mean, because you have to remember, this kid standing in the hallway, he doesn't know what his father's been through. He doesn't know where he came from. He doesn't know any of that as far as we know, because as far as we know, he thinks his dad was a pilot on a spice freighter. Like
exactly.
He's like, my dad's nobody. So I don't think he has any concept of what his father's gone through. And so they don't get enough opportunity to, oh, Brian, I love you. I don't think we get enough opportunity to see that Luke's confidence in that moment. I mean, he's a therapist's dream.
Yep.
He's a therapist's dream right there.
Yes, he is.
Because what he is he's living in the light side of the Force, in the goodness of it, and he can feel the darkness in his father. And I think even in that moment when he's in that hallway, he knows he's going to have to put his foot in that dark pool. Yes. But unlike Anakin, he knows, because he has Han, because he has Luke or Leia, because they have taught him what the real goodness of the world is. I think at that point, he knows he can pull his foot out of that pool. That's why he steps in it.
Yep.
And it's why he throws his lightsaber away and says, nah.
And that's ultimately why he brings Anakin back.
I can step back from it and go, I've tasted the power and it's cool, but I'm going to do this on my own terms. And that is why Luke is Luke,
Yep. For sure.
And that's why you don't see that betrayal of Vader, because you're too busy going, oh, at Luke.
Yes.
Which is totally fine.
I mean, totally earned, completely earned.
It's the boots.
Yeah, it's the boots. It'll always be the boots.
Sorry.
You're exactly right. And I think that, there's so much that we've talked about tonight that I think is so great. And there's so many ways that we can look at this, we can dig into the psychology of this. And that's why I really love, and I'm so happy that we're back to doing more of these canon studies episodes and being able to dig into this, because it can take us down so many paths. And I've got more movies eventually to do and more categories and, all that stuff. And when we're done, we could turn around and do it again and have a whole other path and route and conversation to take. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you for bringing your insight, because as Brian said, and he's not wrong, Rayven doesn't get enough credit for how brilliant she is. She's always on point. And I love, and there have been so many times, whether it was a Force Connect, whether it was the Sisters, whatever it was, there's an episode and Rayven will start bringing up Egyptology. She'll start bringing up, archaeology. There's some, and I'm just sitting there going, she knows, we need to listen to her. And so I'm so grateful that you came and hung out with me tonight to bring your insight and your wisdom to this, because of course I love you. I love the things that you talk about. I love you and all the different shows that you're on, but you do have such great insight and great wisdom. And I love getting the chance to unpack that. So thank you for doing that tonight. It really is an honor. Now, what I need you to do is tell everybody where they can find you, what you've got coming up. Obviously you're on like 100 shows, but what are some things you want everybody to be checking out?
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. And it's been a blast. I enjoy talking about it, and I love not having to veer around topics and to actually be able to delve into them. So thank you for giving me that opportunity. If you're looking for me, you can find me on Sistas With Sabers. You can find me on Force Connect and also on Shootin' PotW. I'm really looking forward to being part of the Podathon this year, though. I have to say that I'm so thrilled. It's such a huge thing for me. So I'm really excited to be a part of that. And really, I think the thing I would most tell people is, please, come and watch us on Force Connect. On Force Connect, it's happy hour. Okay.
Yes.
We are here to be that group of kids sitting around playing vids, like just shooting we just goof around. It's about fun. We're not there to have arguments and do drama and all the other stuff. And don't get me wrong, that stuff has its place. But for us, it's happy hour. So, I mean, if you really want to have a good time, come and see us at Force Connect. Not that any of my other shows aren't fun. They are great. They're wonderful. And I love them all. But if you're really just looking to have a drink, get, not an actual drink. If you don't drink, that's fine, but just come in, have a good time. It's a Friday night thing. And then just go about your business and have a great weekend. That's where I would really recommend people come and see me.
Absolutely. And I've got it up on the screen. You're Jenna Bella J on Twitter. Anybody can come find you. One of my favorite things about Rayven on Twitter is she doesn't suffer no fools. So when you start acting churlish, she's going to put somebody in their place. And she may not call them out directly, but when she says something, she's talking about somebody, and you go, yes, ma'am. And you sit up a little bit straighter.
Check your tweets. It might be you.
That's right. Because when the boss talks, you listen. That's just how it works. But yeah, follow Rayven on Twitter, Force Connect, Sistas With Sabers, Broaxium, PotW. I love giving those guys a hard time just about the big fun Sunday night crew that y'all have that usually is on at the same time as me. But tonight y'all there was a whole thing and everybody got to be off. So Chris got to come and hang out with us. That's right. It worked out. So follow Rayven everywhere she is. You won't regret it. She's so great. I can't thank everybody enough in the chat for hanging out tonight. We love y'all. I love your commentary. It makes this conversation better. And that's the other thing I love about doing canon studies is the guest brings so much insight, but the chat brings insight. And so thank y'all for hanging out. If you're one of our audio listeners, thank you also for being a part of this. You're always welcome to check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/podcast of the Wills. If you want to ever see the video playback version of this, everywhere else on social media, we are at WillsPod. And I will also just tag in on Rayven and say, Podathon's coming up in a month, and it's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to get confirmed and tell everybody who's supposed to be coming on, because it's going to be really awesome and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I know everybody else and all the other shows are doing the same thing. We really want to blow it out of the water and raise money for Make-A-Wish. I've said this a couple weeks in a row, but my best friend Matt here in town, his daughter is actually a Make-A-Wish child. And so I'm going to do an interview with him sometime coming up soon and share that as a part of our Podathon stuff leading up. Totally a worthy cause. Totally something that we want everybody to support. And it's going to be a day of just having fun and laughing. We will laugh a lot. I can assure you during Podathon, there's going to be lots of laughs. So thank you everybody for hanging out tonight. I hope everybody has a great week this week, and I can't wait to see everybody again next Sunday night. And in the meantime, may the force be with you always.